Hi guys, with Counter-Strike 2 rumoured to be out this week on Wednesday, we've put together a collection of our top 5 tips for those returning back to Counter-Strike from maybe CSGO or an older one, as well as people that are new to it and what to expect with the new features. So we put together our top 5 tips to expect and what to do in Counter-Strike 2 when you're first loading up. Yeah, and if you've got any tips that you think should be in there and you haven't seen them, then shout them out, put them in the comments, let us know. Happy to hear them. Okay, first on our list and tip number 1. Now this one might seem like a really obvious one, but it is to jump into a practice server, ideally with no bots, and play around with the settings. This includes old settings, but also the new settings. Some of the new features include follow recoil setting, where if you have it enabled, the crosshair will follow exactly where you shoot. If it's disabled, then it will stay static, like you can see here. I prefer it to have it off. I think Breely does as well, but look, have a play around with it, see what you think. Another one of the new settings is in relation to the zoom on a scoped weapon. So for example, if you have an AWP or if you have a scout enabled, if you right click and hold it down when it's enabled, it will automatically zoom in and out, and it will continue to do that on a rotation. So it feels very quick to zoom in and out if you're just holding it down. If it's disabled, then it will go back to the classic style of you having to click once, twice to actually zoom in and out. I actually prefer this enabled. I don't usually use too much scope weapons, but I prefer it enabled. Now, this next setting, which is new and very useful, is if you disable the detached silencer. It means that if you're in the middle of a gunfight and you accidentally press right click with a USP or an M4S, you will not detach the silencer, which is really helpful. If it's clicked to disabled, then you can basically never take the silencer off, so prefer that one disabled. One of the other new settings is to do with avatars and whether they're animated. Don't know, up to you guys if you use that, but we're not that bothered. And have a play around with the new video settings. No one seems to have worked out the meta or worked out what works best, so it's whatever works best for you really. And as I said, do all this inside a real life server with no bots, so you can see the real life changes that you make and how they affect your gameplay. Tip number 2 is learn the new nades. Unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that the new smokes are very different to old style Counter-Strike. You throw them, they look like this. You can also throw an HE grenade into the middle of it and it clears the smoke. This is something that a lot of players will be using. Pro players, casuals, face it, whatever you play, you will probably come across this mechanic, so definitely worth spending some time and understanding how this works. There's a really nice feature in the practice server as well, where you can throw the grenade cam on, or enable a grenade cam, which basically shows the trajectory of the nade and where it's going like this. Well worth trying that out. You can learn some cheeky one-ways, lineups, you know, just understand how the nades throw and feel. The molly's also got an updated animation, so well worth checking that out. But the main mechanic here to focus on will be the new smokes and how the HE grenades react with them. So jump in the same server as you were before, just stay in there, have a play around with it. I would not recommend just jumping into a game without knowing this, because it is a bit different to how it's been over the years, but a lot of fun. Tip number 3 is get to know your loadouts. New feature again in CS2 is the introduction of loadouts. So this is where you can personally just play around with the loadouts a lot more than you could before. Most importantly, being able to equip the M4S and the M4A at the same time. There's other things you can play around and choose here, like the old loadout system. But it's way more interactive and personalised to what you decide to do. You can add more shotguns, for example, if that's something you prefer. Take out the AWP if you never use it, and add a few more rifles. But definitely worth having a play around with this, working out what loadout suits you. For example, I keep kind of bringing in and out the AUG into the CT loadout and swapping it out with the AWP, because I don't AWP that much. But we definitely think this is going to be something that people will chop and change. A lot of debate about whether you have a bit of a troll weapon like a Negev in there. But yeah, really cool feature. Make sure you have a play around with it. You can also make it a lot easier to see what skins you've got, which I know is important to a lot of people. I think the biggest change with the loadout feature is probably the introduction of both the M4S and the M4A. I suspect not many people will have one or the other. They'll probably have both. The last thing you want to do is be the one person in the team that can't afford to buy an M4 and everyone's got an M4 because you've put the M4A in and not the M4S. But yeah, tip number 3, play around with the loadouts, understand it, get to know what works best for you. Okay, tip number 4 is before jumping into a ranked game or face it or premier game, make sure you get to grips with the gameplay and the mechanics in a mode that's comfortable to you. During the beta we've only really got access to casual, premier and deathmatch, but we suspect that when the full release comes you'll have retakes and things like that. Play what you prefer. There's multiple modes that people would tell you are best. Pros play lots of deathmatch, things like that. Really loves a bit of retakes. That's what he finds gets him in the right zone to go then tackle some face it or ranked. Diz, I prefer a bit more casual play. So whatever you prefer to play that. Get to know all the new mechanics that you've just learned from testing them out, the smokes, etc. And play that before you go into a ranked game. Definitely will feel the benefits, but play whatever makes you more comfortable and what makes you happier. Okay, last but not least on our tips, our top 5 tips for trying CS2 out, and is get to know the new maps and the new design of the maps. There's been a lot of tweaks to maps, in particular Overpass, which you could see us on here, and failing at this jump there at short. We would definitely recommend just having a run around in these maps whilst you're in the practice mode or a practice server, understanding how they feel, look in their new look. Definitely worth doing before you jump into a ranked game or anything like that. Hopefully if you follow these tips you're now all set to jump in and start taking heads in CS2.